Hello and welcome to a video from filmsbychris.com. That's Chris with the K. I'm Chris with the K. Today we're going to talk about your network devices and in particular your loopback device or your low device. If I type in ifconfig, make sure I'm clicked to my terminal, ifconfig, I'll run this and you'll see that you have a couple of devices depending on your system. Here I have an Ethernet port on my computer, I have my Wi-Fi port, but you'll see that you have this low loopback device. You can also do IP space A and we'll also give you information on your network. Depending on how your system's set up, you may use one or the other. But again, you have your Wi-Fi device, you have your Ethernet device, but then you have this low device, loopback. What does that mean? And you also notice that your IP address on that should always be 127.0.0.1. What does this mean? What is this device? Well, it's a virtual device. It's not a physical network device. It allows you to do networking stuff without actually going out to any network. And this is great for security things. And I'm going to try to give you a basic example today, and I'll give you hopefully a better option tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but on the next video. But let's go ahead and start. What we're going to do is we're going to set up a web server, okay? So let me just increase my font here a little bit now that we've got that off the screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a web directory, or just a directory. I will move into it, and I'm going to create an index file. So index.html, I just put the word hello into it. Now I'm going to start up a web server on port 8888. By default, the default for web servers should be port 80. I already have a web server running on port 80, but I'm just going to use BusyBox HTTPD. I'm going to say -v for verbose, F to keep it running in the foreground, and then I'm going to say port 88888. So now I've run that. So now at this point, I can flip over to a web browser right here. And I can type in my IP address, :8888, and you can see it says hello. I can do localhost, and I'll hit enter, and it says hello. And again, port 8888, 8888, yeah, I said enough. And then here, 127.0.0.1, 8888, yeah, whatever. And you can see that we got hello. Now I can also flip back over to my shell here. You can see the requests that were made and where they were made from. You can see this is from my device. This one doesn't have any. That's when I did the local host. And then we also have the 127.0.0.1. If I open up another shell here, I can do the same thing with wget, right? I can say wget, and I'm going to just dump to the output to the screen here. I can say my IP address. I can also use domain names, but it says hello. I can also do localhost. There it is. And then I can also do the 127.0.0.1, and I get hello. So it seems like the same output, but what's different is one of them's going out to a real network and the other two are not. And this is important in certain things. You would be surprised how many applications on your computer and on your phone actually open up ports to do a loop back to themselves, and these applications are many times just web interfaces a lot, but there's also other reasons you might want to loop back and open up ports. Doing it on the loopback device prevents other machines from being able to sniff or even see that traffic whatsoever. So even though I'm getting the same results, when I'm actually typing in my IP address, that 192 number, especially in this case it's not encrypted, people can see that. They see where I'm going, they can see everything that's happening since it's not encrypted, and they can actually redirect and change things. But the other two, they can't unless they're actually on my local machine. So let's go ahead and see if there's something we can change. If I was to run or create now a config file, I'm going to create a config file. I'm going to call it httpd.conf, and I'm going to say inside that a:, and I'm going to say 127.0.0.1. I'll hit enter. And then I will also add to that d:**. Now, if I was to cat out that file, you'll see it has those two lines. There's a lot of other settings you can put inside this config file, but what this is saying is allow connections from this port, and then D is deny anything else. So it will only allow connections from this address. So if I was to start up my server again, but this time I'm going to say C and give it that config file. Now if I was to come down here and run those wget commands again, if I do the 127 number, it says hello. But if I go up to the one that gives the IP address, it's not going to give me anything. And the same in this particular case with localhost, because it's still looking for that IP address and it's not receiving that in this. So you can see that we have now blocked, but there is a difference. If I go to my web browser here, I can refresh this one, it says hello. If I do these other two, it says forbidden, forbidden, meaning that I'm still actually connecting to the web server. It's denying me. But there are ways that you can completely block anything on certain ports from different addresses or devices, which is what we'll go over in the next video. But again, this is commonly used, these loopback devices, for locally running services, and I always think back to SLTAS, which may not be, that's how I've always said it, I don't know if there's a proper way to say it, which is a very lightweight distribution of Linux. It's used to be only about 30 megabytes. Now I think the most current one is somewhere between 40 and 50 megabytes, but that's a distribution of Linux with a full desktop. And many tools, but a lot of the tools, if you go into the system configurations, are just web pages. And when I first saw this, I thought, well, how dangerous is it that they are just running a web server and to configure your entire system, but they're using that loopback device. So there really isn't a security risk. No one's going to be able to see, sniff, or change that on your networks because it's not really going out to a network. The only way they can do any of that is if they're already on your system. They're already on your system. There's nothing you can do about that. So yeah, that's what the loopback device is. It's a virtual device that you are using to do network stuff without actually having to go out to your physical LAN, either through Ethernet or wirelessly. I hope you learned something new. And again, we're going to be looking at doing a little bit more with the loopback device, because again, in this particular case, these connections are still hitting the web server, but the web server is denying it. We can actually block them altogether if they're coming from outside the local device, and have it not even get to the web browser or web server in case, maybe there's a security issue in the web server that someone can find a way around. Filmsbychris.com, that's Chris the K. There's a link in the description. As always, I thank you for watching, and I hope that you have a great day.